Hi everyone,
G'day.
welcome to Parkside Online. Thank you so much for tuning in. We pray that as you join our conversation on feasting and fasting that you might experience Jesus' love.
Yes, and as we start tonight, I wonder when you have felt most celebrated in your life. Do you have a moment that you can reflect on and go, I felt celebrated?
Maybe a couple of times, but the one that just sprang to mind was when you organised my 40th birthday party down at the beach.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was cool. We just had people come from all over the place. We're at the beach, one of my favourite beaches, one of my favourite places, and yeah, I felt celebrated. It wasn't about gifts, but it was about people's presence, is in their presence being there with me.
Yeah.
Like it was just, wow, these are my friends and they are here because of me. Like it was really, that was the thing. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
And like I'll share, I had a friendship that's years old, and just recently I was reflecting on that friendship, and my perception was that it was drifting, that it had become quite task focused, that we would contact each other when there was something that we wanted to get done or that we wanted to discuss. But apart from that, things were looking a bit meagre. The cupboard was looking a little bit bare. And I was wondering if it would continue. And I felt like a relationship is one of those things where sometimes you're not sure if you can influence it. You know, the other person has to make a decision as well. And it was in the moment of thinking about that actually my friend called me up, and I picked up the phone and we were laughing and chuckling and remembering shared memories and making plans for the future. And for me, it was a demonstration of how quickly our perceptions can change of a relationship. And I think it showed a little bit the power, just celebrating what we'd enjoyed in the past together, and then making plans together. So we'll just ask the question again, when was the last time that you felt celebrated? And if you're watching this, it's probably a good time to press pause and reflect for yourself, or you may want to discuss that with the people that you're watching this with. When was the last time that we felt celebrated? And if you're coming back after pressing pause, well, we're going to just draw some inspiration from the scriptures here, from the Gospel of Mark, and just a couple of verses here. Mark chapter 2, and it says this: once when John, now we're talking about John the Baptist here, and we'll explain that in a bit of a minute. So when John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, some people came to Jesus and said, why don't your students fast like John's disciples and the Pharisees do? Jesus replied, no, do wedding guests fast while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. They can't fast while the groom is with them. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. Besides, who would patch an old piece of clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger hole. And no one puts new wine in old wineskins, for the wine would burst from the wineskins, and the wine and the skins would both be ruined. Now, new wine calls for new wineskins. So there's a lot in there. And if you're new to this, if you're exploring faith, or even if you're perhaps even a bit skeptical, there's a narrative going on here that at this time there were a few different elements of the community seeking to influence how people thought. And so if we step back broadly, the people who were the focus of this were actually an oppressed people, that they had a military force ruling over them, controlling government, appointing rulers, collecting taxes, and basically prescribing laws for people that they had different culture to. And in addition, the traditional Jewish culture was being challenged by Greek culture, which was all the new young people were
Yeah.
taking on. And so in the middle of these two major influences, then there were groups of thinkers who were also trying to influence. And we see here, these are two. And the Pharisees represent the traditional approach.
Yeah.
That this little book here is comprised more than half of the Torah, which is the instruction, the law, the prophets and the writings, the Hebrew scriptures of the time. These Pharisees knew that. They memorized huge chunks.
Yeah.
And they took very seriously obeying what they read.
Yeah.
To the point where they would actually kind of add additional laws to the written law to make sure that they didn't break the written law. Very knowledgeable and a pretty high status position too. There was a council and a lot of Pharisees influenced the council, the decision of the day. This guy called John at the other end of the spectrum. I mean, you know a little bit about John.
Yeah.
John the
John
Baptist.
kind of, he actually was Jesus' cousin, but he kind of spent a lot of his grown-up years in the desert with another group of people called the Essenes, and he had a reputation of wearing some wild clothes, camel hair and eating locusts and that kind of thing. And then he was often found near the river baptizing people.
Yeah. And so we can see today, like if you go back, there are historians like Josephus who write about these groups, the Essenes that you mentioned, the Pharisees, another group, the Sadducees. The history reflects the existence of these groups. And perhaps it's like the culture that you find yourself in today, that there are various people trying to influence how we think. In our country, we have had a series of people challenging some of the media organisations that control newspapers and television, because they are suspected of using their influence to direct a particular group of people to political power in our nation. And some people believe that, some people are skeptical, but it's one example where we can find ourselves influenced. And then there's also a new wave of thinkers who are often making their own investigations, using online means to get their message out, saying, no, there's a different way to think. And so we've got to make a choice. How do we see the world? Because how we see the world determines the people we're going to become, determines how we respond to problems. And so this is the environment that we step into. All these competing influences. And then there's this issue here. Now, we talk about fasting. You recently went through some treatment and you fasted. When you fasted, what were you doing?
For me, when I was going through treatment for cancer, I was fasting so that the treatment would work better. So it meant I didn't have anything to eat. For
did you
like
drink
28
anything?
hours. I did drink some water, but no coffee, no juices, just
Hardcore.
water. Just before and after the treatment.
Hardcore. And as you're watching this, if you're up with the times, you may have heard of things like intermittent fasting, where people choose not to eat for
14 hours or 16.
There you go, for health reasons. And fasting has certainly been shown to have health benefits. There are some of you watching who may choose to go without something. It might be food, it might not be, for religious or philosophical reasons. Excuse me.
Maybe to focus on something. Or to change your focus.
I've even heard people talk about a social media fast. And I don't know if you've ever fasted as you watch this, but this was a cultural practice of the day. Now, there's one particular cultural practice that I want to talk about. As you're watching this, we are married. Yes, sorry, gentlemen, she's a taken lady. But we are married, and we're talking here. Jesus uses a story of a marriage. We have our own cultural practices, and around this table earlier we discussed with friends what that was like, and here it's usually you have something like we call it a buck's night or a hen's night, where the bride-to-be and the groom-to-be celebrate their friendships. And then a little bit later, you then have the wedding ceremony where the formal and sometimes religious things are exchanged. And then there is a reception, which is a celebration. Yeah. Your experience of a wedding may be very different. Maybe quite similar. We'd love to know. Let us know in the comments what your experiences are. Now, when you look at a traditional Jewish wedding, I'm not a Jew, so if I'm wrong here, please feel free to correct me. But my research would say that actually traditional Jewish weddings begin with 2 receptions. And often those 2 receptions are separate. The bride has one reception, the groom has another. They can be co-located, but often will happen in separate rooms. And so when Jesus here says, how can people fast when they are with the groom? That reception is actually a time of feasting, of celebrating. This is a good thing in your life, and yes, this might change the amount of time that I can see you, my friend, but we can do this, you know, we're going to do this. And then there is a period of fasting, and sometimes it can be up to 7 days, but the bride and the groom fast in their time apart after the reception. Now, sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's just a meal, but they fast with the idea of intensifying. So as they feel hungry, they go, I want to see you, you know, which is kind of a romantic notion.
You know, intensifying that longing for one another. You know, like, you know, they might have had a glimpse when they're each having their parties, and it's like, soon we'll be able to be together. And then often they'll come together with everyone, and they'll have a little canopy over their heads. And some traditions say that that's supposed to happen actually outdoors, but again, they then go through the formal part of the ceremony, and there's actually, like, the legal contract is often read out. And I really like this. So after that goes on, there's then a moment where the bride and the groom withdraw to a separate area, these days often a room, and it's just them, just in a room. And in the middle of the formalities and the gathering and the impending celebrations, they have a moment where they bless one another. Sometimes they exchange gifts, and they just have a few moments together. And then they come back out, and everyone gets involved in the party. And so when we read here that how can the guests fast while the groom is with them? You know, traditionally, this is where people might survive on a meal a day or 2 meals a day. And when they gather, there have been food specially prepared for this feast to make sure that there is an abundance, that there is a time of celebration. Saying, this is it good, we want to be with you. And I think that is a powerful thing here, that we can follow a religious practice that focuses on lack. That we can fast because we lack something, because we miss something. We're right now at a period of time where some people are practicing what's called Lent in the lead up to Easter, and they may say, I'm not going to have chocolate for Lent, or I'm not going to watch TV. You know, that can be a helpful thing. And yet what Jesus is saying here is, now is a time not to fast but to feast. Why? Because the one that you need is here now. That Jesus is saying, I am here now. There's no point in them denying themselves something, because now is a time to embrace and to celebrate. And as you're finding your way to faith here, you know, we're going to just look at this. I want you to know that this is not just a picture, but actually that God celebrates you. That right now, this is not a duty, and that when you experience Jesus' love, that is genuine, and that Jesus celebrates over you. Matter of fact, the scriptures say that God sings over each of us.
you matter. And you may be watching this at a low point in your life. And I want you to know that even at your lowest point, even when you may have trouble looking at yourself in the mirror, that God celebrates you. As the one who gives life, He is the one who chose to give you life. As the one who gives hope, He wants to bring you hope in this moment. Don't give up. Don't shame yourself. Hang in there, because you are loved and God celebrates you with as much passion as two newlyweds can celebrate one another. And the invitation for us is that as we move forward, not to live a life that says no, but actually to celebrate the one who gives us life. To be people that say, hey, God, I want to celebrate you. And we don't need to know the whole picture. We don't need to even understand, but simply go, God, I choose to celebrate you for who you are. God, you are the one who gives me life. God, you are the one who gives me hope. Jesus, you are the one who stepped into my life. And that's what Jesus is talking about here, that when you experience that, our perspective on ourselves shifts. When we experience the love and the nearness of God, our perspectives on others shift, and our perspective on the world shifts. And that as we celebrate God, we can then begin to celebrate others out of a spirit of generosity. And that perhaps people that we might find obnoxious and rubbing against, that there is a supernatural ability to say, to rise above and to say, I'm going to celebrate you. I'm going to celebrate you. And perhaps that's a challenge for you as you're watching this, to step into celebration, that as you're sensing the love of Jesus right now, to choose this week to celebrate someone. Man, I'm glad you're here. And I just want to celebrate this about you. And just soak in that. Because this is not just some sales technique. This is not just some how to win friends, influence people. But a Jesus-shaped life expresses genuine love. A Jesus-shaped life expresses genuine love. And that's what we want to do. Because as we move through the world in love, we add to the level of love in the world. We contribute to compassion in this world. And that might be one-to-one. It might be shifting the gravity of your community. But God invites us into this journey of celebration. And there's a thing here that I want to focus on here. I don't know if you've ever been involved in brewing something or fermenting something. Have you ever fermented something?
Only cabbage. I have made sauerkraut before. It's a good
That sounds rough. Fermenting cabbage.
I know, but you've had it. It's delicious and it's so good for you. So
I didn't even realise. I did not even realise that you did it.
Yeah. But that's all. So
yeah. Now there was a point in my life where I was brewing ginger beer.
So it's a bit different to that.
Soft drink, and particularly. If you leave it too long, it actually can turn a bit alcoholic. That's a whole other story. Thank you, Grandma. But what happens is the sugars in it break down and they form a gas. And there's two risks, because you're using recycled bottles, and the risk is, number one, you haven't put the lid on enough, and so the gas just leaks out and you're left with this kind of flavourless water, basically. It's not good.
Yeah.
The other risk, though, is that you've sealed it too well. The gas fills up, and then and when one goes, you can get sympathetic. There's this gas that arises, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. That Jesus is saying, look, when you experience this love for yourself, when you actually experience for yourself God celebrating over you. That is like this gas inside you. Yeah, horrible description, but it is like this gas bubbling out, and I guess we're all going in the same direction here. but you can't contain it
Yeah.
because it just bubbles out. And if you try and put that new way of living into old practices, it does not work. It tears apart the old structures of your life. And that may be old religious structures, that might be old character structures, but this new life just bubbles up and flows out into the world. Nothing can contain it.
Yeah.
So we want to just bring this to a close by saying Jesus is offering you a fresh start right now. A chance to step into the celebration that the one who gave life to the universe longs to celebrate with you, longs to celebrate who you are, and longs to lead you into this life of celebration. Through the good times, through the hard times. There will be times of fasting as we see here, but that's what God invites you to. And if you are ready to take that step of faith and say, Jesus, I want to explode into this life of celebration. Jesus, I'm finding it hard to believe that you celebrate me. Show me right now. Then we're going to invite you just to share a simple prayer where we say, Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. A simple statement of faith that can turn your life around because the giver of life is celebrating who you are. And if that's the decision that you're ready to make as you watch this, then right now, just pray with us these words. Let's pray together. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And for those of you who prayed this prayer, it has begun. That in that moment, that you have already begun to experience that new life bubbling up from within. We would love to support you as you take the next steps on that journey. Please drop us a comment, send us a DM. If you're in Southwest Sydney, we'd love to see you face to face around this table. God bless.
Bye.